Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Harry's Music Room. This is my last video on the Chicago deep dive for the Terry Kath era, and we are going to be talking about Chicago 11. This is the last album that Terry Kath was involved with. Apparently, this belonged to Linda at one time. Kind of a return to form for them. Although I think it's a pretty mediocre album. I'm going to go through the song titles for you. Mississippi City Blues, not my favorite. It just doesn't do anything for me. It's a Terry Kath song, but kind of generic. Baby, What a Big Surprise, another Peter Cetera top 10 single. I think this one reached number 4 on the charts. Follow up to If You Leave Me Now from the last album, the same vein. They're getting more into the middle of the road, easy listening, soft rock kind of stuff. Till the End of Time, again, just a so-so song. Nothing great, just your typical horns and vocals. I mean, there's nothing really stands out in my opinion. And then we have a song called Policeman, which is a Bobby Lamb song, and he just wrote about what it's like. The policeman gets up in the day and he gets ready for work and what he sees and as he goes through the day. And it's kind of a so-so song. Take Me Back to Chicago, a Danny Seraphine song, one of the better songs on the album. Bobby Lamb sings the lead vocal. Also has Shaka Khan as a guest singer on it. One of the more interesting songs on this album. And that closes out side 1. Side 2, we get to a Bobby Lamb song called Vote For Me, where he talks about vote for me and we'll have this and we'll have that and I'll give you this and I'll give you that and all the promises that politicians make. And it's really probably one of the last political, social type songs that Chicago would do. Then the next song is Taking It on Uptown. This is a Terry Kath song that has no horns, just him and his guitar. Interesting, but it almost sounds out of place on this record because it's a little stark compared to the other generic horns kind of stuff. And then we have The Inner Struggles of a Man. This is a total instrumental that could have easily been written for any film score. Very dramatic. And that leads into a song called Prelude for Little One, which has some vocals that kind of lead into a song called Little One. This is a Terry Kath song that he wrote for his 2-year-old daughter, Michelle. One of my favorite songs on this album. And sadly, the last song we would get from Terry. Little side note that Kiefer Sutherland ended up marrying Terry Kath's ex-wife and was the stepfather to Michelle. So, little side note there. So, this was the last album with Terry. And Terry had a hard time dealing with the success of the band. He got pretty heavily involved in drugs, and he was a gun enthusiast. He carried a gun quite often, liked to shoot. Drugs, alcohol, and guns typically don't go well together. He was having a hard time dealing with the success of the band. He just wanted to jam, play guitar, and just have a good time. And this, especially this kind of album, this was not what he had in mind. And he wasn't dealing with it well. And then one night he went over to one of the roadies' house, and they were having a pretty drug-infested type of a night and got pretty wasted. And I'm going to read a little bit from a book called The Eyes That Smiled, which was a biography of the Beach Boys. And in that biography, the writer says he witnessed Carl Wilson partying with Chicago and that Terry was playing Russian roulette, and Carl went over and knocked the gun out of his hand, and said, "Knock that shit off." And Terry got so pissed off, he got up and punched Carl in the face and knocked him down. And Bobby Lamb and others had to break him up. But Terry was known to play with his guns. And then he was at a roadie's house by the name of Don Johnson, no relation to the actor. Both of them were high on cocaine. And this is according to Danny Serafine himself. He says that Don Johnson called him and said Terry had just shot himself. And that he had, quote, he said, "I told him to quit playing around with the gun and quit playing Russian roulette." And the only witness to the death was Don. He said he brought his gun into the house and he started cleaning it. He had a 9mm. And Terry warned him, "Be careful with it." And he says, "Oh, it's empty. Look," and show him that he had the clip. And he says it won't fire without the clip. And apparently he pointed at his head, pulled the trigger, shot himself. That was it. And right before he did that, according to Don Johnson, he says, "What do you think I'm going to do? Shoot myself?" So that was the end. Chicago would never be the same. We lost one of the great guitarists of all time. It was a sad story, but that's the way it goes. Drugs. How many people in the rock and roll world do we know that their life ended because of drug abuse? Anyways, that's all I have to say about that. Up next, I will be doing a video just on James William Guercio, their producer, because you can't really tell a Chicago story without telling his story. He was a huge part of their success. So there will be one more video, but it'll be strictly on Guercio himself. I want to thank you for sticking with me for 11 albums of this. I know Bobby Gass is probably tired of seeing me do Chicago videos, but I do appreciate you watching, and I appreciate those of you who have subscribed. I'd like to keep doing this type of a deep dive on some other records. Maybe I won't do an entire catalog, but I just might pull a record here and there and do a deep dive on some stuff that I really like. So until next time, ciao.